All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. So today, we're going to dive a little deeper into the Trump versus DeSantis war. It's now heating up again. To this point, Ron DeSantis has basically been, hands off, let Trump say whatever he wants. I'm not going to retaliate. Looks like that's changing. Why is that the case? Because he's apparently about to launch his campaign within the next couple of weeks. So he finally grew a little bit of a pair, and he's like, time to retaliate a little bit. So this is going to get fun. This is going to get interesting. Nothing like some right-wing Civil War stuff to get me going. So we'll talk about that. We also have Mike Pence is going after Trump, but he's doing it in the dumbest way imaginable. Of course, he's Mike Pence. And then later on today, Elon Musk goes after remote work. And he's got some really strong words to talk about how evil and terrible remote work is. But I think the part of it that gets under my skin the most is Musk pretends like he's making a pro-worker argument, as he's basically like, hey, shut up and get back in the office. So we'll talk about that and much more, including there's now a revolt happening in Florida because Ron DeSantis signed a really strict anti-immigration law, and immigrant workers in Florida are like, hey, okay, you don't want me here? I'm gone. And that's leading to big issues with the Florida economy. Massive backlash and unintended consequences. I don't think this is exactly what DeSantis was expecting to happen, but we'll talk about that and much more. All right, so without further ado, we'll dive into it in a second. Everybody do the standard shameless plugs. You know the drill. Like, subscribe, support the show on Patreon. You could tip on YouTube, support Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. I never talk to any advertisers for this show, never will, so any bit you guys could help out means the world, even if it's just a couple bucks a month. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it here. So Ron DeSantis is going to launch his campaign very shortly for president. And I guess his staff told him, hey, our approach of taking the high road with Trump is not really working. Trump is relentlessly attacking you, and as a result of that, your poll numbers are going down. Now, by the way, to DeSantis' credit, even with Trump's relentless attacks, he's still hanging in there at about 15%, 20% in some polls. With Low Energy Jeb and Little Marco and all the people that Trump attacked in 2016, he literally made their poll numbers collapse to like 5% or even like 0% in some cases. So DeSantis has hung on better than other Republicans, but still Trump is effective with his attacks. He's relentless with his attacks, and eventually it makes an impact. It also helped Trump that recently, he's the king of triggering the libs, and all the investigations into Trump, all the cases against Trump, that actually makes Trump's numbers go up with the Republican base. So DeSantis is just, he's playing the hand he was dealt, but it ain't a great hand. But now it appears like he finally learned, okay, we're going to have to sort of fire back at least a little bit because we've let this guy get away for too long with too much. So here's the question that the reporter asked, and then I'll play you DeSantis' answer. A reporter asked him, you said during an event in Iowa over the weekend that the GOP needs to reject a culture of losing. Do you acknowledge the Trump loss and there wasn't all this fraud that he talks about? Okay. So listen, that question is a tough question because now, at this point, the majority of the Republican base, majority of the primary voters agree more with Trump than they do with Democrats or the normie position or the common sense position of, hey, you guys are wrong. The election wasn't stolen. Biden won by 7 million votes. So that's a tough question to answer if you want to run a Republican primary. So how does he handle it? Let's find out.
I look at the last however many election cycles. 2018, we lost the House. We lost the Senate. 2020, Biden becomes president. We lost the Senate in 2020. Biden becomes president and has done a huge amount of damage. Very unpopular in 2022, and we were supposed to have this big red wave, and other than like Florida and Iowa, I didn't see a red wave across this country. And so I think the party has developed a culture of losing. I think that there's not accountability, and I think in Florida we really showed what it takes to not just win big, and then deliver big. And ultimately, when you're doing all this, what results are you producing for people? That's really what matters. You can sit there and talk about cable news, social media, all these other things that people are fixated on. And for me, it's like, okay, what's that true north? You obviously got to win, otherwise you don't get a ticket to the dance. But once you do that, how are you going to be able to actually bring about big change to make people's lives better? Next.
Look, it's the best argument he's got, man. It's the best argument he's got. And if he were to make this argument over and over and over and over, I do think it would help him a little bit. Now, listen, it might be too little too late, right? Trump might already be too far ahead. It may already be the case that he's politically doomed. But he's the only one with even a prayer to take down Trump. And insofar as he's made arguments to that effect, to those ends, this is the correct argument. Because the argument is undeniably true. Now, the problem for him is this, though. In the Democratic primary, they really do prioritize electability. Like, so they don't, Democratic voters in the primary don't actually vote for the people who they agree with most on policy. And we know that because all the polls last time around showed we agree with Bernie more than any other politician. But they ended up voting for Biden. Why? Because Biden crushed Bernie on the issue of electability. In other words, the number one priority for Democratic primary voters was, we got to get Trump out. We have to get him out. We just have to. That's priority number one. That's our first, second, and third priority. And so these voters thought, oh, if we go with Biden, Biden's more moderate, he has a better chance to win the general election. So we need to go with whoever can win, and we think Biden can win. Now, by the way, I happen to think Bernie, of course, would have beaten Donald Trump as well. But that wasn't the calculation of a lot of Democratic primary voters, right? And of course, there was the, fuckery behind the scenes, and they all dropped out, and they all endorsed Biden at the last second, and that helped get him across the finish line. We all understand that, right? But the fact of the matter is, Democratic voters do care about and prioritize electability. Republican voters, to this point, do not do that. But this is Ron DeSantis' best hope. Hammer away on electability. Hey, this guy lost in 2018. The party under Trump's leadership lost in 2018, 2020, and 2022. You want to keep running this experiment? We already know the results. He's going to lose again. And you know what? This is how much I think DeSantis is correct on this point. Guys, take any generic Republican, even a totally uncharismatic ghoul like Nikki Haley. I think Nikki Haley has a better chance beating Joe Biden than Donald Trump does at this point. Why? Because it's that chaos, man. You're turning off the normies. You're turning off the independents. You're turning off the moderates. Even center-right people are like, you know what? This guy's a little too kooky, right? Trump's got the heart of the base and nobody else. So this is the best argument DeSantis has got. It might be too little too late, but if I was advising him, I'd be like, yeah, lean into this one. Make it over and over and over. He can't win. I can win. He can't win. I can win. At a time when there was supposed to be a red wave, and there wasn't, DeSantis won by 19 points in Florida. So his argument of like, hey, I'm the future whether you like it or not, that's kind of accurate. Now he goes on, there's one other quote that I want to give you because I think it's actually a very good quote. Governing is not about entertaining. Government is not about building a brand or talking on social media and virtue signaling. It's ultimately about winning and producing results. Again, that's sort of a good-ass point against Trump. It's all about the show, the cable news angle of it, the social media posts, the triggering the libs, and ultimately, you know what? That may be the deciding factor for the Republican voters. Okay, that's the case. It is what it is. But to the extent he has any prayer, he's got to lean into this argument. So this is the first time I've really seen Ron DeSantis hit back in any way that we could even call mildly serious. Now, notice he dodged the question about, hey, were you going to acknowledge that Stop the Steal was BS? He dodged that, but it was in an artful way where he then goes on to make the point of like, whether or not you believe that, Biden's in power and the Republicans have kept losing, and I'm going to change that. Okay, we'll see. What makes this even more interesting, guys, is we have a number of candidates now who are considering running kamikaze campaigns against Trump. The most prominent of them being Chris Christie. Chris Christie is acting like he might run again. And basically he's saying, he didn't say this, but it's implied. I'm not running to win. I know my time has passed, but if I get on that debate stage, I just want to torpedo Trump over and over and give no fucks about it. So if you embarrass this guy, you humiliate this guy, everybody else who's gone up against him has had something to lose, right? And that's part of why Trump is such a better debater, is that these people have careerist expectations. And so they try to, walk the right path and say the politically correct thing. If you got Chris Christie up there knowing he's not going to win, and he just views himself, I'm just going to destroy this guy. Well, that's when Chris Christie was a popular governor back in the day when he was like yelling at people in town halls. If he does that to Trump, to his face, and there's so much material there for Chris Christie, that could get fun and interesting, and it might leave a lane for somebody like Ron DeSantis. But look, at this point, this is all speculation because we all see the polls. Ron DeSantis is at about, 15 to 20% which is still higher than, say, Low Energy Jeb or Little Marco when Trump went after them. He made their numbers collapse to literally nothing, right? Between 0 and 5%. So he's hanging in there, but it's still a massive, massive uphill climb. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.